I'm Tatianna Taylor-Tait, and you're listening to Sweet Success.
You've just checked in to Sweet Success. Join me, Katie Cline, for exclusive conversations with hotel executives, hospitality leaders, and industry innovators. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and techniques these masters of hospitality relentlessly refine. Whether you're already in the industry or just starting out, tune in every week to unlock the secret to your sweet success. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sweet Success. I'm your host, Katie Cline, and today I'm really excited to welcome Tatianna Taylor-Tait to the show. Tatianna is an award-winning designer and short-term rental specialist, as well as the co-founder of the Level Up Your Listing Summit. Taking place March 9th through 11th in Phoenix, Arizona, Level Up is a really special annual event for short-term rental hosts and owners, one that I have the true honor of speaking at this year. Born and raised in Vancouver, Canada, Tatianna's signature design aesthetic can be seen on projects ranging from restaurants to private homes, multifamily buildings, and of course, short-term rentals. Tatianna, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. So tell us, how did you first get started in interior design and more specifically within short-term rentals?
Of course. I'm like, how long do we have for this explanation? Honestly, I really fell into it. Starting from the very beginning, I was kind of at like a low period in my life. I just got laid off from a job and I was like part-time doing graphic design, because originally I went to school for marketing and graphic design first. So I was part-time doing that, got laid off from a job that was like a sales job at a phone provider, and really didn't know what I was doing, kind of felt at my rock bottom, but to my surprise, that was so far from my rock bottom because a couple months after that, I unfortunately lost my mother in a tragic car accident, and thinking that things couldn't get any worse than that. A month after that, my dog actually died. So I was like, nothing there. I was at the rock bottom of rock bottoms, not thinking that like anything could get worse than this, and feeling really lost as I was like grieving. I kind of just needed to like get out and have a reset. So wanted to escape, didn't want to lose my apartment at the time because Vancouver, anyone who knows real estate in Vancouver, it is insanely expensive. So if you have an apartment, hold on to it like your life depends on it. So I had a 2-bedroom basement suite actually. And what I was doing is I was like, okay, I'm just going to get out of here, reset my mind and try to eat, pray, love, find myself situation. And basically someone introduced me to Airbnb and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And I listed my property and to my surprise, it booked instantly. Thank goodness. And I was off from there for about 6 weeks, traveled Europe solo by myself and really kind of got in touch with not only who I am, but really what I wanted to do. And during my travels, it was really cool because I got to share my story with people that I met along the way. And that part was probably my favorite, aside from like experiencing all the different places that I got to see and hotels or hostels I was staying at. I kind of tried it all. I did from like couch surfing, hostels, Airbnb rentals, and hotels, you name it. So I really got like a well-rounded idea of like hospitality in that sense. And I really fell in love with that, as even back home, I was still renting out my basement suite to a family that booked it for the month. And to my surprise, that not only covered my expenses, it actually also covered my travels, which was amazing. And when I got back home, I realized I was so passionate about like hosting and like sharing my journey and inspiring other people and like sharing where I live. So I really kind of like dove into that head first. I started with like, since I was back, obviously I couldn't rent out my full place. So I started with a private room rental. So I'd rent out my spare bedroom, which then covered like 90% of my rent. So I could kind of like focus on other things and not stress out about being jobless at the moment.
Mhm.
And I'm a big believer in like the universe provides and things will kind of like happen as they need to. And to my luck, I guess, and to the universe providing, a friend actually put me in touch with a developer who needed an interior designer to like help furnish a property really quickly. And I was like, oh, I've been interested in that. I can try graphic design, interior design. There's a lot of similarities with color theory. So I gave it a shot, absolutely loved it. The To my surprise, the clients loved it, and so did the developer. So he actually ended up bringing me on for contract work. And then eventually I became full time with their company and worked my way up to the VP of their company while doing all their interior design. So learned a lot in the field, which that honestly was probably the best experience that I possibly could have had. I ended up going to school for design after that just to like
Mhm.
learn more on the technical side and like floor plan side. But the in person experience was like, I couldn't be any more grateful for that. Um, After that, though, basically that developer, I learned everything from short term rentals through him at the very
Mhm.
beginning because I don't even think he realized what he was doing, but he would build the houses or renovate the houses for clients. And then basically after that, he would then manage the properties and put them on Airbnb for the
Mhm.
clients after. So he had a whole property management division, and I was just like, I just want to learn everything. So I was really taking it all in. And him and I always had an agreement once I learned everything that I possibly could from him that I would go out on my own. I don't
Mhm.
think he ever thought that day would come, but it actually did. And I ended up basically doing rental arbitrage. I had my own private room rental that I was doing as my spare bedroom. And then I actually took on a 7 bedroom house from another developer that was going to tear the house down. And I made a deal with him, basically being like, hey, rent it to me for cheap. I'll make sure that there's no squatters or anything in it. And we'll take care of the house while you get your permits to tear it down. Because in Vancouver, it's like
Mhm.
a year for something like that. You have to wait for permitting. So that was a get in, get out mentality. And that house allowed me in under 6 months, we brought over $60,000, which
Wow.
allowed me to do my first investment and flip. And then from there, I kind of just like shared my journey online, and it really kind of like, at least the short term rental side online, and it really grew from there. And got to meet all the amazing people I know in the industry now and share my knowledge and continue to learn. So that's kind of like how I got started. A long winded answer.
But such an inspirational story. I mean, first of all, I'm so sorry about your mom and your dog. I'm less sorry about the job because clearly that was not meant to be. It sounds way not creative enough for you for your
No.
background, but you really took a terrible time and turned it into something super beautiful. Personally, for myself, my mom is also very sick, and it was because of her. She has Alzheimer's, so
Wow.
because of her disease as it was progressing, I wanted to be closer to her. I was living in the UK, and so I moved back to New York specifically because of that, because of a really terrible thing.
Mhm.
And that was how I got started in short term rentals as well, because I didn't want to buy in the city where I was living, and I thought, oh, this could be a time to take a leap. And similarly, last January, I was about to speak at the STR Virtual Summit, and I was really looking forward to it. It was kind of my first moment in this wonderful STR world of ours. And within a span of 9 days, I lost my two aunts and my dog. And so I completely know that feeling of like, can it possibly get worse? And then you get punched again, and
Yeah.
you're like, how is this real life right now? But look, here we are. Here we are on to happier
Yeah.
days. And I wanted to talk what you said about flips. Is that something that you're still doing now?
So my eyes are always out. I think this year, especially, I will be investing in another situation. The one thing our government out here in Canada right now, if anyone kind of follows that, is they are making it extremely difficult for anyone that is in renovations or flips in real estate. We
Mm.
have like a capital gains tax that's like 66%. So really, it doesn't really make it worth it unless you hold on to it for like 2 years. So I've been looking outside of Canada recently, or well,
Mm.
outside of BC at least. So we will see. It's either going to be investing in Mexico, the States, or it will, if I do it in BC, it will be in the Okanagan, which is our wine country. So keeping a feelers
Ooh,
out, but it will
that's
be
lovely.
2025.
Okay, amazing. So speaking of 2025, we're about 2 months into the year now. What do you see as like the big interior design trends of the year?
Ooh, that's a great question. What I've been really seeing is so three things, I guess, because I do renovate like normal new builds, renovations, and residential for families aside from short term rentals. So I can kind of touch base on that too. But for
Yeah,
like
that'd be great.
short term rental side first, I would say we're seeing more quiet luxury. So
Mm.
like subtle hints, and really kind of like focusing on still minimalism in a way, and but people are going more minimalist when it comes to like luxury. They want like subtle nods in their home. And that's something that I'm really loving because it's totally up my alley. I guess, for like short term rental and residential, of what I would say for 2025 is less open concept and more individualized rooms now. People
Wow.
after COVID have decided they want to go back to having private areas and not having everything out in the open. So that's kind of cool to see, especially because I do a lot of heritage restorations and renovations. So bringing back that character in those spaces is kind of fun to work with. And then the other thing that I think for short term rentals and residential that can kind of tie together is more hospitality inspired homes. Of course, short term rentals, we've always been focused on that, but it's really creating residential spaces that are designed with hotel level convenience, comfort, and sophistication. So I think those are at least what I'm seeing and predicting for 2025.
That's amazing. And talk more about what you mean by that, like more hospitality inspired spaces. Is that areas that you can kind of be in a communal area together in the home, or mini fridges in places so that you don't have to always go to the primary kitchen to grab a drink of water? What are you seeing with that?
Yeah, the mini fridge is a really good concept. So like for short-term rentals, I'd say more wet bars in the primary
Mm.
suite. So really making each I've always been big on this, that no matter what, if I'm doing a short-term rental, every single bedroom needs to have its own personality and its in its own right. Just so people like
Mm.
I've always been that person that gets screwed and gets like the worst room. And I'm like, I'm not, no one's getting the worst room in any of the homes that I design. They're all beautiful themselves. But like really having, so like if you're doing a primary ensuite, giving it that hotel luxury feel. So wet bars, coffee stations inside, having like custom built-ins as their closet instead of just like a normal bifold closet doors.
Mhm.
Of course, like TVs, on the TVs, actually doing it exactly like the hotel does, where it says like welcome and the guest's name, little things like that. Of course, more noise machines, diffusers, to give like really tapping into people's senses when they're checking into the space. And then don't even get me started on the bathroom, as luxury as possible. Bringing in as much natural aesthetics, robes, slippers, having different toiletries that people can use. When I was traveling in Bali recently, one of the things that I realized, for a country that you would think is like not first world, like the States or Canada, but basically every single Airbnb or short term rental that we checked into, they had their own set of toiletries that was like toothbrushes, shaving kits, mouthwash, like everything was completely done out. And of course, there's some listings that do that, but not enough. And I feel like that should almost be a prerequisite.
Calling all short-term rental hosts and real estate investors ready to turn your listing into a money-making machine. Join me at the third annual Level Up Your Listing Summit, happening March 9th through 11th in Phoenix, Arizona. It's the event where female hosts come together to learn, share, and level up their game. Use code SweetSuccess, that's SUITESUCCESS, to get 10% off your ticket at levelupyourlistingsummit.com. Tickets are sure to sell out, so act fast. Hope to see you there. Yeah, I love all of those tips. You're getting my wheels turning. I'm actually sitting in one of our rental properties in Saratoga Springs right now, and you're making me think, "Ooh, what can I add there or change there?" Because a lot of those are not expensive
No.
changes, but you're right, they can really make a difference. And going back to what you were just saying about being in Bali, I think something that's really interesting about short-term rentals is the cultural nuances of the hosts, of the guests, right? And sometimes that could mean getting a lower star rating than you were hoping for because the guest expectations were different than what you delivered. So from your travels, were there anything else that you saw that you thought, ooh, American and Canadian hosts need to step up? Or, ooh, actually in America or Canada, we're doing these things right, and the rest of the world could also take notice of that as well.
So there's always like when I travel to countries that aren't as like first world, I always kind of go in with a little bit lower of an expectation. I am probably a stickler when it comes to like if I'm booking, I do expect a certain level of quality. But when I am traveling, I am always open to that standard. I do think at least in Bali, out of the places that I went, I did go to a couple places in Southeast Asia, from Hong Kong to Thailand, Bali, and the Philippines. Bali, hands down, had the best service out of all the places that we went to and the best setups.
Wow.
Of course, you can't beat price because the price difference there is outrageous, but basically, outrageously low. But the level of service, every single property that we booked came with cleaners that would come and do a cleaning every morning, which so they're refreshing the space just like a hotel. They basically had so many options. And this is something that I've kind of incorporated in my listings, but now more than ever. And I think this is another thing in 2025 hosts should be kind of thinking about incorporating is like the upsell features that they can offer. Basically, every single one of these houses, either our villas, either had the opportunity where we could add on a private chef or we could have certain meals delivered to the property throughout the day. This is extremely good, especially for people that are new to the area and don't know where to go or like where to get good food or anything like that, or groceries. They had like grocery delivery service. They had in-house masseuses. Honestly, anything I wanted, I could get it. One of the days my fiance got Bali belly, which he was like super sick. And in under 30 minutes, I had like an IV treatment nurse at the house. And like, it's crazy, just like, especially being from like North America, I think we do expect for certain things to be at our fingertips. But like,
Yes.
I'm not even kidding you, like Southeast Asia, like they have it down. Like most businesses I could talk to on WhatsApp within like seconds and communicate that way. They're just so efficient when it comes to like service-based businesses like that, or like their version of like Uber and things like that. So I really think they have that portion down when it comes to hospitality. And I would like to see more of that here.
I love that. First of all, 30 minutes, that's fast even to a New Yorker. So
Right?
you're right. That is impressive. Absolutely impressive. And I love what you're saying about these upsells, because sometimes on the forums, you see people being like, oh, if someone wants to check out an hour later, charge them extra. Or if they ask for extra linens, charge them extra. And for me as a guest, I'm like, that feels really icky because it just feels it feels like such an overt money grab
Yeah.
versus if your house is open, just let me stay for an extra couple of hours so that I don't have to leave super quickly. And I know there's varying opinions on that, but what you're saying is almost take the time up front to do the research, find the right chefs, find whatever services you want to offer. And then once you've done it, now it's just you're going to get a commission, I'd imagine, every single time that you're referring them. So what a win-win
Exactly.
for another local business and for your guests and for you, for your wallet.
And that's such a good point. There's two things that kind of come to my mind for that. Like for me, I have a property in the Okanagan, which is in the wine country up here. And that one, so for years, we would like me and my friends would book it for a week and just like that would be my vacation time up there. And then we would go to wineries. For the first couple of years, we were paying someone to take us because I didn't know much about it or anything. And then one of the years I was like, you know what? I'm going to look into this and I'm going to plan. I was DD at that time because as you know, I do not drink
Right.
anymore. And so I wasn't drinking. So I'm designated driver automatically. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to plan the wineries out. So it was so easy just to make the appointments. Literally, they're free because they want you to come in and buy bottles. And
Right.
the only thing that I would have to plan is like the transportation and like what our itinerary is going to look like throughout the day. And
Right.
I did that for my friends. It ended up being like the best wine tour ever. They were all blown away, being like, well, how did you even like find this or like figure this out? And the whole time I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I could be charging for this. And
Yeah.
this is an easy service to set up for our guests. And it's going to feel like a luxury service because I catered the tours to their personal preferences. And now it's a huge upsell that I know that none of the other properties are offering. So that was
Yeah.
one thing that we're implementing this year. And then kind of like bringing to mind like the difference that we can make is there's a company that is speaking at our summit. Actually, they're called Home Services Academy. And what they're doing is amazing. They actually are teaching hosts how to basically build cleaning businesses off of their cleaners that they have. So they are basically taking a percentage from those cleaners and the services and then giving them alternative cleaning jobs in other listings and other properties, which is basically uh, giving you additional revenue for something that is like little to no work.
Right. I love all of the businesses that crop up around the
Right.
industry. I think it's just so fascinating. And much like you're saying, where somebody like yourself with such an entrepreneurial mindset could say, I'm planning a wine trip with my friends, and it makes you think I could be charging for this. And I don't think everyone has the ability to think like that. So it's a really impressive trait, which makes me want to go back to something you said earlier. You got to the point of being a vice president of design without having quote unquote formal design training.
Mhm.
Talk a bit about that. And when you actually got that formal training, were you like, oh, there's all these things that I didn't know? Or was it all like, yeah, I know all of this from doing it on the job?
That is such a good point. So, yeah, it was cool. There was obviously it's my father always jokes and says I do everything the hard way. It's never the easy way. But so like obviously learning on the job, there's going to be a lot of like learning curves as you're going through like maybe even to this day my terminology is probably like considered like more I would say like blue collar, I guess, instead of like the actual design terminology. But when I ended up going to school for it after the fact, like it helped me a lot when it came to actually like using SketchUp and like using the actual softwares that I need to make my life a lot easier when it comes to floor plans. I still prefer not to do those hand and I have a team that
Mhm.
helps me, thank goodness. Because I am the creative. I just need to like be in my zone for that. But when it came down to like what I learned in school versus like actually running an interior design firm is very different. You do not learn anything about really like you learn a little bit of surface level of marketing your business, but it's nothing like it needs to be. There's like actually doing presentations and like selling to your clients, don't really
Mhm.
learn that.
Mhm.
Pricing yourself properly, don't learn that. Like, so there's so much stuff that it had to be trial and error, and actually
Mhm.
getting other designers as mentors and asking the hard questions, things like that, and learning, from mistakes that I've made. So I always think like you are going to learn. I like school. I actually love going to classes and like learning things, but there's only going to be so much that you can actually learn, and it's very different. And there's a lot of different things that in the real world you'll have to experience to kind of like learn to navigate from there.
Yeah. Do you feel like, aside from becoming more proficient at SketchUp, do you feel like you really needed to go, or is it almost something that you needed as like a tick box when you were meeting with certain clients, for example?
I think it was helpful for certain things that I normally wouldn't go. Like, I'm not going to go and look up the history of everything design and like spend the time to like actually do that. I go to kind of like, I'm more natural. If I feel like it calls to me or like that's a vibe that I like, then I totally go for that. And I feel that it was more a natural gift in that sense, but honestly, it would make things easier, but do you need it? No.
Okay.
Mm.
Interesting. So when you look at short-term rentals overall, what are the biggest mistakes that you see hosts make when it comes to design?
Oh, two mistakes probably. One is forgetting functionality. People don't always think about that. Like, you want to think about storage, comfortable seating, and like how like practical layouts really matter. But so many times I've seen and been in properties. I'm actually designing a resort property with a client right now, and
Wow.
we've done like 5 different floor plans to choose from, and storage was so important. There's so many built-ins, but one of the things is making sure like the owner's closet is big enough to house everything. And then considering like, okay, if the owner's closet is inside the unit, is that going to disturb guests if we have to go inside, or should we make access from the outside? So really
Mhm.
thinking about functionality when it comes to those things, even for like your cleaners, if they're going to have to are they doing all the linens inside the unit? Is that a functional space for them?
Mhm.
So that those kind of things really impact. And then the other thing I would say is um, telling clients or like owners that it's not for them not to focus on their personal taste when designing units, because I'm sorry, your opinion does like it's your unit, but your opinion does not matter. It is what the guests want that is going to be the best for your investment.
Right. Which is funny because it's kind of counter to what you said in terms of your vibe is really following your intuition. So I
Mhm.
guess it's like it's about their personal taste if they have good taste.
Well, in a way, so like for me when I design a space, even though it's with my intuition, I'm really big on the psychology of space. So there's things that
Mm.
are important to me, the experience and the emotion that we can evoke from a space. That's really what I focus on. But when I design a space for short-term rentals, market research is first and foremost what is done, and then basically we figure out how can we evoke emotion and how can we really create an experience throughout this, while also being sure that we're hitting the numbers that we need to.
And how do you approach that market research? Like, are you looking at comparative listings, or how are you getting a sense of what the market wants?
Yeah, so we will do a comparative analysis of the best performing like properties within the area. We look at things like their amenities. Of course, we use tools like AirDNA, B&B Calc, all the great ones that are out there, and Strike even. They have a great platform as well. But basically, we will compare numbers from there. We cross reference amenities, see what people are doing right and what they're doing wrong. But the thing is you can't just copy what the best guy's doing. You actually have to take that, figure out a way that you're going to elevate it, and then add your own personal touch to it.
It's such good advice. If I had a really tiny, tiny budget, to update my design, what do you think is the most impactful things to spend it on?
Paint and wallpaper first. That, and then I would say lighting next, and then you would go to like linens and bedding, and then you're like rugs and window treatments. Those things alone, you can actually make such a huge difference. Like just smacking fresh paint on something will be night and day.
Yeah. And if I had a huge budget, what are going to be the big ticket items that will really impact my ADR?
Well, huge budgets are my favorite budgets. But
Those are my dream budgets too.
jokes aside, if that's the case, it really depends on like the shell of the property that you're working with. But I would say kitchen and bathroom upgrades are big. High quality furniture or amenities, then I would invest in. So making sure that your furniture is like either commercial grade or high quality grade so that it's going to withstand that wear and tear, and that traffic. And then, of course, outdoor spaces. So amenities like your fire pits, hot tubs, saunas, how you are really kind of like setting up your outdoor facilities, if it's like a deck or landscaping, vice versa. And then last, I'd probably say like after that, I would invest in custom built-ins. They really make such an elevated touch to spaces.
That's great. With the rise of social media, how important do you think it is to have a quote Instagrammable property? And are there certain things that you think make imagery of short-term rentals specifically more shareable?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I feel like that really comes down to almost staging the property in a way where people can imagine themselves there. Really, that's kind of like a psychological move as well. When people are staging it, maybe they're setting up the table so it looks like a romantic dining, or like the outdoor movie theater projection, and like setting up the popcorn and the picnic blanket. Like that's really just creating and like an element of an experience for people so they can imagine themselves there. Um, that's kind of like what I would say more the direction of Instagrammable. I would suggest people now stay away from like really like these selfie wall. Like you can still do a good selfie wall, but like do it in a tasteful way. I feel like in a timeless way versus like the ones where you have like all these different signs and like the mustaches and stuff like that. I'd stay away from that stuff, and the like greenery walls. I know I talked about this with the short-term rental virtual summit as well. Um, Take those dust magnets out of your units now, because it's not really doing you any good. But for me, I feel like Instagrammable is a little bit different now. The more and more that we're seeing, like think about kind of going back to Bali and um I'll let you guys in on a little secret. So going back to Bali and like Thailand, and you see all these Instagrammable moments. Everyone knows of that famous swing in Bali that's like over the rice fields. Everyone's seen that. In Thailand, everyone's seen these beautiful backdrops of these islands that are in the background. Or I'm trying to think of one that's like super popular, but like to be honest, after going to those places, none of that actually looks like that. That is not reality. And I hate to burst anyone's bubble that is going to see it. Like literally next to some of these things is like trash. Like I'm not even kidding you. And or like insane amounts of traffic or people behind you just to do that quick shot and get it done. And that's not our reality anymore. And I feel like more and more people are starting to realize that and pull away from it, especially when it comes to social. They want more of like a real feel. And then they also want more of a touch of like that relaxation and like wellness and calm feeling throughout. So again, kind of going back into quiet luxury, I feel like well thought out designs, like for example, the cliffs at Hocking Hills, they have a beautiful property and they've really focused on like enriching it in the outdoors and like really tying that in as much as possible. They've done like beautiful waterfalls and pools that are built into the stone. That is always going to be like Instagrammable air quotations, but like thinking stuff in like that way is going to be a better approach for you versus like, hey, what can I like quickly do of like a selfie greenery wall with a neon sign? Like really think timeless. And yes, it might be more of an investment, but I promise you in the long run, you will save money because you're not going to have to constantly swap it out.
Right. It goes back to the authenticity almost that everyone's craving. And something you touched on earlier, too, in terms of the actual functionality of design. It's all well and good if you have this, cute wall or whatever, but if it's actually uncomfortable chairs or there's not a cozy space to relax with your friends afterwards, like, is the space great for a weekend? Probably not. Was it great for one photo, like the places that you just referenced in Southeast Asia? Yeah. And then you want to leave and you want to get someplace more comfortable and enjoyable.
Yeah, 100%. It's unfortunate that that's how like our world is at the moment, but I'm starting to see like the turnaround and I'm hoping for humanity that we go that route.
Last kind of question I want to talk about in terms of design and short-term rentals. Um, I come from a PR background. And so typically in PR, we struggle, or the industry struggles, I should say, to quantify exactly the value. So there are metrics and ways that we can do this and backlinks and whatnot, but you can't necessarily say, hey, this sale happened because of a piece somebody read on a publication or an interview somebody heard. And design, I think, is kind of similar in the sense that I believe you and I probably think that we know the well-designed properties are going to get higher ADRs and higher occupancies. But have you thought about that at all? Like, is there any tangible evidence that we can actually say this is what great design does to your property's revenue?
Yeah, so I actually have an actual case study on one of my own properties, and it probably could have not been a better case study, because so my unit that's in the Okanagan, my father built the duplex. So
Mm.
basically, he has one side, I have one side. They are exactly mirrored units. The only
And
thing that
exact
is
same location, obviously, too.
exact same location, exact same mirrored. They're just like opposites of each other. But the only difference is I invested in the design. I spent more money than him in the design. But so I invested. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and he did not. His was IKEA, literally like my hand-me-downs from my first that 7-bedroom rental, things like that. And then mine was I went all out, changed the the light fixtures in 2 of the rooms, um, like really kind of like made sure that it was elevated. We have like branded toiletries, everything from there. But in comparison to my unit and his, mine brings in $50,000 more a year.
Wow.
Right? And I don't think he liked when I told him that, but um that was such a powerful like case study to show to be like design really matters. We're not doing anything different. They are just as good when it comes to customer service as me,
Mhm.
and the hospitality aspects. We both provided welcome baskets. Like there was so much. The only difference was the design and of course the quality of our photos that were
Yeah.
presented. And that
Did you win him
like
over as a client after that, I hope?
yeah. Well, yes, but my father is stubborn, so he always he doesn't want to say someone else is right. So that's the
Earlier, you touched on the fact that you also design primary homes. Do you
Mhm.
see differences between designing for a primary home versus designing for a short term rental?
I love that. A primary home, yes, there are a lot of differences. A primary home is designed more for personal comfort and, of course, long term living. So, there, instead of like the guest in a short term rental and like that market research, the owner of that primary home who's going to be residing in it, obviously, every single day, their preference is key. So, this is where their opinion matters, obviously. And I'm really big on trying to create spaces that are a true reflection of the people that are living in them. So if it's just an owner who lives in it full time, or if it is for guests, that house is built to their tastes. Of
Mhm.
course, timeless is always something that we try to go for. So if they're like, I like this color and it is my favorite color, and they want every room to be their favorite color, like I will kind of talk them off the ledge for some things, especially if it's like too out there. And then we'll like find other ways to like incorporate it subtly. But there's the difference of that is also probably like expectations, because owners that are living in their house, they don't care about a return on investment. Like, yes, we still plan when we design and renovate homes for resale value.
Mhm.
But that is not as big of an interest to them. So it's really
Yeah.
about creating a sanctuary. And then, of course, for short term rentals, it is creating an experience that we can like get the best ROI out of.
Yeah. And you had mentioned that you're also designing a resort. So how is the process different for that?
So this one is super fun. I'm super excited. I'm actually creating a resort for Brian Hatcher, and his like vision for this. I am 100% all in, absolutely obsessed with this. I'm not going to share the vision yet. That's kind of like under wraps for what it is, but it is going to be a 4 or 5 cabin resort
Mhm.
in the mountains in Atlanta. And I am so excited. Like the concept of this is each individual cabin, again, really going into quiet luxury and that wellness piece. But as we design it, I think it's been a cool experience for him, because it's not just a new build and then we're stopped. It's basically a whole, like all around 360-degree experience, because not only are we building it, we are doing the furnishing and the design for it being a short term rental. So, really, we have to already pre plan that at the beginning, which I think is better for most people, because then you're already catching those things like, okay, where's the cleaning closet? Where's all the landscape maintenance going to go? How are we going to think about like dumpsters and trash and placing that in a space that is really going to work with the plan of the property? So there's a lot of moving parts, but I think being able to build it from the ground up is the best approach if you can.
Best approach, but also I imagine a big challenge in a way, because at least with my two rentals, having the frame was kind of where the source of inspiration came from. And earlier you talked about um, working with heritage properties as well. So I imagine it's similar there. So for that property, which sounds incredible, was it more about the land? Was it about the destination? Like, where did you even start?
He
And maybe
so
that goes into the vision that you can't touch on yet.
Yes. So the land is everything. Basically, the views, it has beautiful sweeping mountain views,
Wow.
basically on both sides. So no one unit is going to like miss out, which is amazing. We're really planning about that. And the whole design that I can say is it's actually incorporating as much of the surrounding nature in it as possible. He also got inspiration from recent travels that he had. So we are incorporating that throughout. But it's like, yes, as like a freestanding house or a freestanding like property that you are working with, there are cool things about that, but there's still going to be issues that you run into, being like, oh hey, I wish this room isn't big enough, we can't like alter it too much, or like the plumbing is set to only this space. We have a
Mhm.
blank slate with this, so we can do whatever we really, within reason, of course, and
Yeah.
within budget, but
Within
we could
budget.
do whatever our heart desires. So it's really cool to be able to like be as like creative as we want to, and then have a client that really understands that and is like gung ho about running with it.
Yeah. When you think about balancing aesthetics with durability in short-term rentals in a resort, how do you approach that?
Well, I try to invest in as much commercial grade furniture as possible. If we're doing like custom sofas, things like that, all the fabrics are always like high quality and durable for like stain resistance. I even get some that are like water resistant. And just really thinking about the longevity of things. I try to pre plan ahead of time, like, okay, how is a client going to use this, or like guest going to use this? And I almost do like a visual exercise every time, and like walking myself through the property, thinking about like, okay, if they have kids coming, are they jumping on the furniture? Are our
Mhm.
dishes going to be broken? So are we going to invest in Fable, or are we going to do like Amazon or IKEA? And like really
Right.
thinking about that. A big thing that we also try to think about is like the outdoor amenities. Is one amenity, one of the things that we actually recently were talking about was doing like a loft net in the deck on the property. But then we kind of backed up for a second. We're like, okay, we've seen in other properties in their photos, these don't really look the most clean. They sometimes have like leaves on them, and like I don't know if our maintenance can maintain that. If it's rained, it's then wet, and that's an icky
Mhm.
experience for a guest that's going to stay on it. And then I back up and I ask myself, if I was using this, am I actually going to use that loft net a lot, or am I just like going to sit on it for a photo and then never step foot on that area again? And then that's where
Mm.
we kind of think about like, okay, is the ROI worth it on doing that, or can we take that money and invest it in something else that's going to make sense and that is going to be continuously used?
The loft net feels like the perfect example of what you were talking about that you saw in Southeast Asia. You would get on it, you would take a photo on it. I went for my honeymoon in the Maldives. I have a photo of me reading a book on it. And then I got off of that thing and got into a more comfortable place to read that
Right?
book.
Yeah.
Yes. So I love that thinking of like, hang on, if I'm here, how much am I using this
Yeah.
space?
I'm so glad that you could back that up. That was
What design pet peeves do you have? If you're staying at a short term rental, great example is you were just saying you were traveling for 6 weeks in all different parts of Southeast Asia. Were there things there, or maybe more closer to home, that when you see it in a picture, you're like, oh, really, guys, we're doing the neon sign again? Maybe some of those pieces that you said earlier, but are there other ones that you're really like, causes you a little bit of an eye roll?
that's so hard, but like obviously, yes, that big one is like the token green selfie wall, like fake plant sign. That one probably gives me the ick the most recently. Um, all matching furniture sets. I
Mm,
think that just shows that you just literally went to like the brick and bought everything because it was all on sale and a deal, and there's like no intention in the design. It also shows kind of like, yes, maybe you got it because that was what was within budget, and maybe you don't have like a design eye, and that's totally okay. But I feel like at least trying to be a little bit more eclectic in like your choices, and not just being like, oh great, okay, this whole bedroom set that all matches is here, let's just throw that in quickly. Because
right.
people can feel it. It feels like there was no actual like intention put into the unit. And like, of course, yeah, that might work for someone that's just traveling for business and needs a quick in and out. But like over the period of time, you are not going to stand out against your competition.
Yeah. Do you have any predictions for the future of hospitality design?
Ooh. Any predictions? I would say, honestly, just people are going to go like, we've already seen last year. I kind of, someone asked me that question about the predictions, and I was like, you know what? It's the wellness sector. Everyone's going to be tying that in. And now look at, we are bringing the wellness sector in. And I think
Yeah.
if I can say a prediction, it is going to be definitely less about in a way, less about the Instagrammable moments, and really actually being in the experience, and nurturing that. The other thing that we're going to see is more and more, just more as we get bigger and bigger into the wellness side, more sustainable practices, and like considering that. And then I hope, as a future prediction that I'm putting out there, I hope we see more and more people offering those additional services and elevating the
Mhm.
experience that we were talking about.
Love that. So I want to ask you the final three questions that I ask everyone. And first is, what was the best hospitality experience you've ever had?
That was a hard one. Does it have to be like, I can be any hospitality
It
experience?
could be anything. It could be like, a family member cooking you a great home cooked meal. It can literally be anything.
Oh, that makes it so hard. There's so many to choose from. Um, oh goodness gracious. Uh, that one I'll have to think of, but what comes to mind is like a great hospitality experience I had. I talked about this last year at the summit was the Fairmont Pacific Rim. Their spa hit like an outstanding amount of touch points when it came to like the experience and like really connecting with me. There were like small details. Like I cannot stress enough, and maybe this is the direction that we're headed. It is about the small details now, and that's what's going to really take a good experience to a great one. That like spa experience that I had, to this day, like I cannot stop thinking about it. And I think when anything that I like, it has to be memorable. If it's a meal, like, if I go out to dinner, if it wasn't something that I'm like, oh, I'm going to crave this at some point in my life, then I feel like it didn't hit the bar. But with the Fairmont, they really hit it when it came down to like experience and like personalization. There were small things like not only did they like feed me with like an incredible amount of snacks and like have different things throughout the spa that I could like personally choose for my preferences from like the literally the sound, what kind of music I wanted while I was getting my massage is like, that is something that is like so small, but it's such a being like, oh, what? Like I have that choice. And it really kind of makes people feel really special. And like having like a duvet goose down blanket instead of like some thin sheet. It was just small things that really made it go the extra mile. So I'd have to say them, but of course, I've had amazing experiences from like, being brought into hosting where I've had like dinners made by the host and they're making local meals and really sharing that experience and that recipe with me. That's always such a memorable experience that like to this day I have those recipes and will recreate, and I'm sure when I have a family share those same things. So that's another cool one.
That's amazing. What was the worst hospitality experience you've ever had?
Okay. So this one was last year, and the worst experience I had was unfortunately one of my times where I was staying in Mexico. I usually do a 6-week trip to Mexico in January, but as you know, this year we did Southeast Asia. But the water stopped working, and so anyone who knows like Mexico, especially Tulum, they're like infamously known for like sometimes depending on the area, the water will stop for a couple of hours. The water stopped working. That was normal. Okay, expected that. Literally, we opened the door, came home back to the apartment, opened one of the bathroom's doors to the largest cockroach infestation I have ever seen in my life. And I
Oh my
am
God.
not a bug girl, like absolutely keep it away from me. And I am frantically messaging the owner and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
this is an infestation. Like, there's no water. I'm sending pictures and videos, and like, we're like
Yeah.
stuffing towels under the door, praying that they don't come out. And the owner, all he does is basically totally disregards how like serious this is. And then
Mhm.
takes a couple of hours, and basically all they do is they drop a small can of Raid off for us to deal with.
It's
And
almost worse than doing nothing.
that's like spitting in my face. I was like
Yeah.
so horrified. And of course, I'm like fuming because I am like not one to like take that. But then,
Yeah.
so long story short, we dealt with it. It got kind of situated. But the other thing with that same host, this is how painful it is when people don't understand that you are in a hospitality business. Don't do this if you don't like dealing with people. Like that is not,
Yes.
but they had a plunge pool too. And the plunge pool was kind of dirty and had stuff in it. And I was like, okay, like, can someone come clean it out for us to use it? And like, hopefully I don't sound like I'm just like some like angry guest, but because that's not the case. But that the owner actually was like, "Oh, we have a strainer you can use." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, where is it? We can do it ourselves. So that's fine." They go, "It's in the kitchen." And they literally were using the same strainer to strain the pool that I was like straining my pasta noodles with.
That's horrible.
Right? And like, oh my goodness gracious. So that was like, I would say, worst experience that I've had, hands down, at least
Did
lately.
did you stay the full 6 weeks at that one place? And did you leave after any of those?
We did stay. They dealt with it. I got a little bit of money back, but they did stay. We did stay for the situation just because we were at that point, we were like maybe 2 weeks until we had to go.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. And final question. What does hospitality mean to you? And is there any one person, brand that you think has truly mastered it?
That is a tough question about like one person or brand because I feel like there's always ways that brands can improve or companies can improve. Going back to like a brand, again, the Fairmont was a good one. But for me, like personally, what hospitality means is creating moments and like experience that people can actually keep as a memory and hold on to, something that's special to them. Anytime that I've like traveled or gone on these trips or stayed in properties, the memories that I've like formed in those places are what I hold dear to my heart and like can last a lifetime. Like honestly, one of the short-term rentals I stayed at, which was also like my first, it was in Tofino. It was my first trip to Tofino, but that property will forever like have a hold on me because in that unit is where my fiance like proposed to me on that trip. So
Wow.
that like as hosts, we need to realize like these moments are so special for people, even if they're ones like I've had ones where people were grieving and had to go to like a funeral, or they're bringing sick family members and they're like, spending their last moments together. That still, like, yes, that might not be a happy moment, but as hosts, we can make that so special for people. And that memory that they're going to have in those like last moments or whatever the situation is, you don't know what that can do. So I always think about putting hospitality is putting us in other people's shoes and figuring out how can we make that special for someone.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Tatiana. Before we say goodbye, do you want to just say a little bit about Level Up Your Listing Summit coming up March 9th through 11th in Phoenix, Arizona?
Yeah, of course. I am so excited for this year's summit. This is our third year. If anyone is new to Level Up Your Listing, we actually started as mainly just a short-term rental summit. But actually, as we grow, pun intended, with leveling up, we have expanded. So this year we have a focus not only on short-term rentals and real estate and hospitality as a whole, but we're really focusing on interior design, entrepreneurship as a whole, getting into things like exit strategies, developments, really investing into other businesses and ways to increase your portfolio. And a big thing and like theme for this year is basically taking, being a hobby host into a CEO. And Natalie will talk a lot about that throughout the summit. But it's really cool because just as you and I talked at the beginning of this, originally what started as hosting turned into so many different like businesses for me that I like now have my hands in. And I would have never, ever had this opportunity if it wasn't for short-term rentals and starting out that way, which I'm so grateful. But it's really cool because if what it takes to host and put these properties together, if you can do that, there are so many different avenues of business that we can easily apply to. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that or think about it. So we're trying to shift the perspective and say, hey, you can do this and you can really kind of take this as far as you want to. The summit's 3 days. We have a kick-ass welcome party that we're like known for because of our branding activations. And then really just the community that we've built is absolutely amazing. If you have no one to go to the summit with, that is honestly probably the best situation you could find yourself in because everyone is so welcoming and you are going to leave with so many friends and potential business partners after it. It's honestly an amazing experience, and we really try. And I'm not just saying that because it's an event that I've co-founded. It is beautiful, and I'm very grateful.
Well, I couldn't be more excited. It's going to be absolutely amazing for everyone listening or watching. If you're interested in hearing Natalie's episode, she was also a guest of the podcast a couple of weeks back. I'll be sure to link that in the show notes. And Tatianna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And we will see you at the summit for your amazing speaking session also.
I can't wait.
All right, everyone. It's time for today's sweet summary where I break down the key insights and actionable takeaways from today's conversation. I was truly inspired by my chat with Tatianna Taylor-Tait. The way she's able to create good things from bad situations is nothing short of remarkable. She went through an incredibly hard time losing her job, then her mother, and then her dog. And rather than letting that break her, she used that time to lay the foundation for a thriving business that she has today. Most of us would agree that great design translates to higher rates, but Tatianna took it a step further by putting real numbers to it. The fact that her unit earned $50,000 more annually than her father's identical unit next door is proof that design is the differentiator. And it's not about overdone selfie walls or predictable neon signs. As she put it, it's about hospitality-inspired homes, spaces that allow guests to connect, unwind, and make lasting memories. She joked that she always does things the hard way, but I'm not so sure about that. Maybe it's the publicist in me, but what I see is someone who takes action. Someone who jumps headfirst into an interior design job without formal training, who spots a developer's problem and turns it into a lucrative opportunity, building a rental arbitrage business and earning enough to fund her first flip, who starts booking wine tours for friends and then turns it into a profitable venture. That, to me, is the mark of a true entrepreneur. Someone who sees opportunity in every challenge. Someone who has the resilience to get back up when life knocks them down again and again and again. And someone who has the courage to go after new possibilities. And most importantly, when unexpected doors open, they're the person who has the confidence to say yes first and figure out the formal training later.
And that concludes another episode of Sweet Success. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. We all know how important those 5-star reviews are. I also want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in. It means the absolute world to me. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future guests, new topics to cover, or even just want to say hi, don't be shy. Message me through our website, sweetsuccesspodcast.com, or on social media at Sweet Success Podcast. That's sweet like hotel suite. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Cline, and I'm super excited to see you all next week.